The Chicago Bulls have decided not to make a trade at the trade deadline. We're going to be talking about what that means for the Chicago Bulls this season and what this means for this team moving forward. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you have found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And so, today, the Chicago Bulls decide not to make a trade at the trade deadline. And I must say, before we jump into it, I think that this is absolutely disappointing. So we're going to be talking about the ramifications of the Chicago Bulls not making a trade at the trade deadline. We're also going to be looking at the trade that they did make with Zach LaVine and how that possibly could play out here down the line as well. And so before we go ahead and jump into the content for today, wanted to remind you guys that about 65.1% of you that watch are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure that you go ahead and you slam dunk on that subscribe button for us, as it means a lot as we try to reach our end of the season subscriber goal. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this content for today and talking about talking about this front office and the Chicago Bulls not getting a deal done. And so if you want to, you can find this particular article. It's on Yahoo, and it is by Julia Pope, the Chicago Tribune, talking about how the Chicago Bulls made a deal for Zach LaVine, but didn't get anything else done there. So this, I think, is a very disappointing thing for the Chicago Bulls fan base. I think this is very disappointing, just kind of moving forward with this team, because let's start with the fact that I think that they absolutely had another deal to be made. All right, because I think that when you look at Vooch, you look at the way that he was playing this season, and I know that he's really kind of tapered off so far down the stretch here the last month or so, but still, I think when you look at the fact that he was a walking double-double at the 19.5 points a game and 10.5 rebounds a game, I think that this is a player that absolutely should have been traded, could have been traded. And when we look at some of these trades around the league right now that have really come in, I mean, just around the NBA, I'm just throwing out a couple names here, but I see a player like Reggie Jackson be moved from the Philadelphia 76ers. That netted a couple of second round picks. And then I look at a player like Marcus Smart, who I love him as a defender, but he has not really been out there for the Memphis Grizzlies. And you're looking at a player in Vooch who is essentially going to be on an expiring contract. And you're telling me that you couldn't find one team in the entire NBA that would not at least give you a second round pick. Because the bottom line is, when you move on from Zach LaVine, you are basically signaling that you are trying to go to a rebuild, and instead of going all in, you don't find a trade partner for him. And I'm just not sure what the trade value is going to look like in the offseason, especially if Vooch continues to really kind of taper off down the season. Now, I'm not saying, that it's going to be disastrous down the stretch of the season or whatnot, but, bottom line is, if he doesn't play as well as he played earlier, I'd have to think that is going to hurt his value as far as being moved in the offseason. And I get that it is closer to an expiring deal then, but with a team like Golden State, who I think really they still need to make a move. We did see late that the Golden State Warriors tried to get back into this thing, and I want to know what exactly happened to where the bottom fell out of the deal, because I absolutely think that Vooch could have been a great fit there, especially once they got Jimmy Butler over. You have to think they have a stretch five. You have, hopefully Jimmy Butler is healthy. You get an added defender, a shot maker. You have Draymond Green. They still have some young pieces there. And we know that the Golden State Warriors had the draft capital. They also had the expiring contract. So what exactly could AK and this front office really have been waiting for in not making a trade deadline deal here? So I think that is extremely disappointing. And so, just pivoting a little bit more with Lonzo Ball, I will say this, like with him, I didn't necessarily expect for him to be moved, especially after, we got the word of the extension, which I think is absolutely team friendly. Don't have an issue with that. We do know that maybe there were some rumors and rumblings around him, and I could certainly understand that. I think that Zach LaVine is a player that absolutely can help your franchise win. I don't care where he's at. His basketball IQ has been on display all season. I think he's going to get even better as he recovers back from this wrist injury. And we saw what he could do on the defensive end. I mean, even if he's not scoring, the things that he could do on the defensive end for your team makes it worth it. But I don't have an issue with Lonzo, him coming back, you deciding to go ahead forward with him, because I do think that he is a player that does help the younger core kind of transition into bigger roles. And so I think that Lonzo perfectly fine with that deal. Look, it is team friendly. It allows for the Chicago Bulls to opt out if they want to. That's perfectly fine. So I don't have an issue with that. And I just think the bottom line here is I think that Vooch could have been on the move. And I think that I'm not in the camp of moving Ayo. I'm not in the camp of moving Coby White, which we're going to talk about that in a moment. But, I wonder if the Bulls really seriously explored that, because they are going to run into that situation with them, that they're going to have to go to the negotiation table with these players. And that extension, we've talked about it before with that 140 rule. Essentially, it's not going to be enough. I think that they are going to really command some real money, and the Bulls have got to make some decisions here moving into that. And so, I think that more so, if you're doing that, then you got to make sure that you're committing, to these younger players. And so, with that being said, kind of moving on to the deal that was made, and just, are we really satisfied with that? Because I think that there is a lot to be desired when you look at what the Bulls got back in this deal, for Zach LaVine. I think that the bottom line here is that, when you look at this and you say to yourself, okay, the plus in this is you get the control over your picks. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's perfectly fine. But I have the issue with this. If you knew that De'Aaron Fox wanted to go to the San Antonio Spurs, you knew that he wanted out of, Sacramento, essentially you're helping these teams out, right? Everybody's supposed to be helping each other out. And I don't understand how you don't net one pick back for moving Zach LaVine. I mean, even if it's not a first round pick, which, arguably speaking, the way that he was playing, the way that Vooch is playing, I think that you could argue that they were at an all-star level. But you're telling me you can't get one pick back in the deal. Like, that is where I think that was just an absolute fumble by the franchise. And I think that, depending on what they're going to do as far as moving forward, I think that we might look back at that and really wonder. And I've said this before, it's great that you have, control over your picks and things like that. But I don't care who you bring into the building. If you don't have a plan, you don't have an understanding of what you want to do with that draft capital, it really means nothing. And so that's the thing that I would say about just getting back your own picks. I think that you need some more additional bites at the apple in case that you don't get it right, because we know that when you are drafting, a lot of times that is going to happen. You've already signified that you're looking for a rebuild, and you didn't go all the way in. You're kind of in between two when you're holding on to Vooch, you're holding on to Lonzo, which I get is more of a team-friendly deal, but still, I think that this is very disappointing. And when you look at the players that are coming back here, whether it's Herter, Trey Jones, Zach Collins, I just don't realistically see those players being players that are going to be a part of the future for the Chicago Bulls. And I get the fact that you did get some cap flexibility. That is a good thing with their contracts. You also did create that trade exemption where you get, I think, $26 million of a trade exemption. So that is a good thing. Not sure if they're going to use it. But aside from that, you have some players that I think they might actually get in the way, because think about this. We have Lonzo that you just re-signed. You have Giddey that more than likely you're probably going to go to the negotiation table with and pick him back up as far as going ahead and re-signing him. You have Ayo, you have Coby. You didn't move off of them. We did hear the rumblings and things like that, and so we don't know what's true. But now you have Trey Jones here in the fold. So that's a guard that maybe it's like, all right, that's kind of in the way, because you already have so many. And then when you look at Herter and you look at the possibility of where he's going to play, if you're going to put him at the wing, look, you have Modest Buzelis, who you are just now starting to play. And so you add a player that actually might get in his way a little bit. And then you still, I'm not saying I agree with this, but you're still doing this Patrick Williams experiment. And so you're still in a situation to me where it's like some of these players, they kind of get in the way. And then with Zach Collins, I get that you want to bring a center back. But think about this, though. If we have Jalen Smith, who's actually shown that he can be pretty good, and I wonder at times, could he be a starter? Now you throw Zach Collins in the mix. Where does that put him, right? And so that's where I question that, because I was thinking that maybe AK was going to flip these players. He doesn't do it. I think that maybe leads into more frustration. And you just really have to wonder where we are going with the direction of this franchise, because like I said before, you really have got to have a plan. You've really got to have a clear direction. And I'm not sure that we're doing that by bringing in some players that kind of get in the way of these guys. Once again, you're probably going to put, I think, some successful draft picks in our franchise really in a challenging situation, because it looks like, once again, they're going to have to really try to adjust themselves again, and maybe have to adjust their role, right? And then it's like, on top of that, where again does this put your player, Modest Buzelis, which I talked about as well, when you're adding into this, because we've already felt the frustration as a fan base in wanting to see this young man play minutes. We finally got a chance to see him after the trade. He got, 24 points, didn't miss a shot. And even though it's not talked about it that much here in this Minnesota game, in which we got pretty much destroyed in that game, I think Modest Buzelis still played well. He had 14 points in the game. He showed us that he could get to the basket. He shows that he can knock down the three-point shot. By the way, he still got 3 blocked shots in the game. He got 5 rebounds, which sometimes is more than what Patrick Williams gives us on a night-to-night basis. You're adding more pieces, and then it's like, how you haven't even necessarily evaluated what you have on the team. And so I just wonder about it. And I think a lot of players and a lot of people really around the league are probably in the same situation when it comes to wondering about just the Chicago Bulls. Look, this is what Draymond Green had to say, taking a snippet of what was on, I think it's an article here on SportsIllustrated.com. But if you want to go watch the actual show, it's Draymond's podcast. And I think the title is "The Bulls Got Fleeced," talking about Zach LaVine and that situation. But he talks about the franchise just not being smart. And pretty much, they just at times they've just shown this over and over again, and just trading Zach LaVine, in my opinion, for really nothing. And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this, because like I said, I think that when we reach the bottom line to this, for me, personally, I'm like, you've traded off Alex Caruso, you traded off DeMar DeRozan, you traded off Zach LaVine, and you did not net like any additional draft capital back. And that you need that in order to go into a direction of a rebuild, which you clearly are headed into. If not, you're going to be in the same place just over and really over again. You continue to kind of do that. And so on top of that, you didn't get the draft capital back. And then his press conference afterwards, he's talking about this. He says, look, we're still trying to essentially see what happens in the next 30 games. We'll determine if we can make the play-in or playoffs. That'll be something that is key as far as being achievable. Just paraphrasing what he was saying in his press conference after, in addressing why he didn't make a move. And it just really sounds like that AK is kind of set on really running it back, which is why I said that this is something that is just, it's like, man, it sucks. It sucks as a Bulls fan, because I just say this, like, our franchise just doesn't have a direction. We still won't click, or we won't pick a clear path in this thing. And so let me know in the comments what you think. Should the Bulls have gone out there and made another trade here at the trade deadline? Or are you like okay with the fact that we didn't make a trade? Do you think somehow, some way, the Bulls are going to now gain some courage? They're going to gain a plan. They're going to gain some heart here and really start to pick a true direction and actually start to work towards it. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Want to thank everybody out there for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the content. It means a lot to us here at Bulls Digest as we try to reach our humble subscriber goal by the end of the NBA season out there. And I just want to leave again with, look, this is just disappointing. I think that the Bulls have got to get a direction. And I really am worried at the fact that even if we do get a high draft pick, I'm not sure that we necessarily have a plan for that draft pick. I think that, the restricted free agent that we have in Josh Giddey, we're going to have to really make a decision there. And with Coby White and Ayo, you have to make a decision there as well, because that's going to affect how you build the team. And it sounds like you're kind of lukewarm on all these players, and that is really, I think, a head scratcher for me. So anyway, let me know in the comments. I'll see you guys on the next one. Go Bulls. All right, peace.